Welcome back to another episode of Men, Women and Happiness. I'm joined by my co-hosts Leanne Counsellor and Ann Moir-Bussy. This week we're talking about menopause, so the rest of the intro I'm going to hand over to Leanne, if that's okay.
Good morning, Scott. Good morning, Anne. So today we have a wonderful guest. Anne is a psychotherapist. She has been a psychotherapist for 30 years, and she's an adjunct associate professor at Charles Darwin University, supervising PhD students. So this woman is an absolute wealth of knowledge. I've had the privilege of knowing her for about 3 years now, and we have discussed menopause and the program that she has in helping women in what she calls the alchemy of midlife, which I absolutely love.
Oh, I like that.
It's such a beautiful way to express what so many women see as a negative. And Anne has this lovely gift of being able to help women through that phase of life and therefore help men, really. But what we're really going to focus on today is menopause, how it affects women, and what can be done about that. So, Anne, please welcome. And you have so much to say, I don't even know where to start. So I would just like to hand it over to you to give a little bit of an introduction, I guess, about menopause and what that means for most women.
Thanks, Leanne, and thanks for having me here. And thanks, Scott. Menopause happened for me a long, long time ago. And when I came into it, I was not prepared because it wasn't talked about. And I think for many women, it's not talked about beforehand very much, and they're not given much preparation for it. And neither are the people in their lives, their families or their relationships. No one sort of seems to know what's happening until it suddenly happens. And I was talking to a woman just the other day. She come to see me and she's 47 and she said she's coming into menopause, but I don't want to get old. I don't want to look different. I don't want my body to change. So I guess one of the big things is that when menopause hits, women know that they're in a transition time because of their body, because of the hormones, because of the sleeplessness, the hot flushes, all those things that women don't like. And generally the people around them don't like it either, or they don't understand it. But I think one of the big things, while that's all addressed a lot with what do you call it, in the media, they often address, or social media addresses, you can take this or you can do that, or you can have hormone replacement therapy, or you can do something else, or you can make your face look younger, you can plaster your face up, and you can do all these things you need to do. It doesn't change the fact that something's going on in their body, within them, all signaling a change or a transition. There's a wonderful little book, called Red Moon Passage. And because it's a phase of the moon, if you like. It's a transition from the moon phases of a woman's periods and life into a totally different phase. And so many women fear that transition because they have a feeling that they're going to lose everything that they've gained in the first half of life.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with that. My friends and I are all going through that at the moment. We're, 52 this year. And one of them was really devastated the other day, saying that she doesn't want to get old and she's scared about that. And, what's that going to mean for her? And is she going to be worthless, in the eyes of society? And it's really sad that that's what media and movies have portrayed, that, you're only worth something if you're a young woman. Whereas men are often revered, the grey fox and all that sort of stuff. You don't really see that often with women these days. So there is such a stigma around it. And also what you said about not knowing, like we talk about it and all of us have that sense of, oh, right, this is what's happening and the hormones are going crazy and all of that. And as a psychologist, I see a lot of women coming in because they think they're anxious or depressed, but really what's going on is the hormones are going crazy and it's not being addressed medically. Instead, they're given antidepressants, which actually doesn't help.
You know what I find interesting about this is that certainly young boys witness their mums going through it, but I suppose, and I suggest that, when you first have your period, I'm a single father, so I had to have the period discussion with my daughter, which was weird because I haven't had one. But thinking about this change, I mean, those of us that still have mothers alive, do mums talk to their daughters about menopause? I'm just really curious about that because, in the same way that you might talk to your daughter about a period, for instance.
That's a good question. I don't know. I mentioned it to my mum. I was like, well, what did you go through and all of that? And I didn't notice what was happening for my mum when she was going through it. I just thought she was, in a bad mood or something.
So did I, yeah.
I had no understanding what menopause was for her 30 years ago. What's your thoughts about that, Anne?
My mother had a hysterectomy, so and I also had a hysterectomy at that stage. And that was because of the kind of work that we did, I think, and the stress that we were undergoing and the lack of understanding when that was happening to me of how you could change or what you could do with your periods so that you didn't flood or bleed too much and then end up having to have a hysterectomy to calm it all down. So it still left you with menopause. Not many people do prepare their daughters for menopause because they're much older by then and they forget about it, and the children are married and they're off somewhere else, and they don't often talk about it to their mothers, which is what I found with the clients that I talk to. Okay. They say that no one prepared me for it, no one has told me. But I think one of the big things that is important to focus on, we talked about alchemy in the midlife kitchen, and the alchemists were those people who took raw material and tried to transform it into gold. And that became a metaphor, if you like, for what's happening in the transitions of our life. And if women can remember that all those wonderful experiences of their first half of life before menopause, they are not to be left behind. They're to be brought into the process and sat with and engaged with and transformed into inner gold, where they find that wise woman within them. Because what a lot of women think, I'm going to lose my youth, but they forget that they have sitting inside them a wise woman who's waiting to be welcomed, who's waiting to be brought out, this wise woman that's going to then pass on all their learning and all their experience to their children and to the ones coming after them and to other women who don't know where they are. But it's a journey, and that transition journey is painful, mainly because we're facing the unknown. We're facing uncertainty.
Yeah, that's so true. I really love that analogy of owning your own wisdom and your own gold and really becoming aware that we have learned so much and an incredible amount of stuff. And when it comes to relationships, careers, there is so much knowledge there that is to be passed on and looked at in a way that is revered, in a way, honoured, respected. Respect is a big one, isn't it? And a lot of women don't respect that in themselves. They fear that change. And I admit I've had those moments of wondering what it would be like, to get to 60 and 70 and all of that. But that's okay. It's okay to wonder, and it's okay to be a little bit afraid of it, I think, as well. But if you feel that sense of complete angst about it, then that's when someone like you can really help, isn't it, Anne?
Yeah, because the fear, we're all afraid of the unknown. That's fairly normal. But if you look back, how many journeys have you made into the unknown? You've travelled overseas, you've started one career, you've had to leave that, move into another career. When you started your periods, it was that unknown. I remember the terror I had. What's going on? What's happening? Even though I knew it was going to happen, it was quite frightening. And then I think the other thing is, come back a little bit to the relationships that you talked about, that what we forget is that we have 3 lots of relationships in our lives. You've got your outer relationship, if you marry or if you go with someone else. You've got your work relationship and all the people involved in the work relationship and how that pans out when you're going through a transition. And then you've got the relationship to yourself. And I think that one's the one that women neglect most when they get to life. They go through menopause, they focus on the physical, but they forget that relationship to their inner self. And that means a time apart a little bit. Just like the alchemist had to sit in a kitchen, but with a guide, with someone working with them. So we need to sort of sit in a quieter space, take a little bit of time out, deal with the body, but also deal with the inner feelings that are coming up, embracing them, as I said, and getting in touch with that wise woman, getting a relationship with that wise woman.
Can I ask you a question, Anne? I mean, I think we know that shame is really prevalent amongst women, and particularly, going through, I guess, your first period and through your own sexual evolution amongst women, shame is such a big deal. Do you find a correlation between that level of shame and people's level of fear about walking into menopause?
I think what I've picked up with many women, it's shame about what's happening to their body, the weight gain, what the hormones do, and the fear that that's going to make them unlovable.
Yeah,
and as I said, you're not your body. You're not all the wrinkles. The wrinkles are actually a sign of your wisdom. Every wrinkle tells a story. It's an experience. But there's a fear that I won't be lovable anymore.
Yeah, right.
I think that's where the shame is. Oh, why can't I get rid of this weight? Why can't I, keep my face looking young? Why can't I do this? Why can't I do that? And again, it's that fear of maybe people won't love me, because we need connection. We need growth. We need connection. The only way to grow is to embrace uncertainty. And yet we're afraid of doing something we don't know.
But what a powerful message for men in relationships with women who are going through it, right? If you understand that your partner is now fearing not being lovable, there's a lot you can do about that as a man, right? In a relationship, well, assuming it's heterosexual, by the way.
Yeah.
I always want to say that, but yeah, I mean, I think there's a lot as a partner that you can do to support that if you know that that's the driving fear.
Maybe one of the difficult things there, Scott, is, and I think we might talk about this in another one there, is that men are going through the same fear. They're no longer able to work the way they... So while they need to understand what's happening for the women, or while we hope they can communicate it, they're going through the same fear. Maybe I'm losing the woman that she was. She's becoming more independent. She's becoming more aware of who she is. She's she's finding her own voice.
Yeah, I see that a lot, and with my work with people who are going through divorce or who are considering divorce, a lot of them are between that age of 45 and 55, where they've put up with bad behaviour for such a long time, no boundaries, and not really respecting who they are as an individual. And then menopause comes and the hormones change, and then they start seeing things in a different way, and they understand that, you know what, I don't want to put up with this anymore. And because they've been with their husbands for such a long time, husbands are like, whoa, you're changing. The fact is, yes, they are changing. But the guys in these situations, they take a long time to catch up. They don't understand that this change is actually good in the long run. They're so used to it being a certain way for 10, 20, sometimes 30 years. And the woman's like, well, you know what? If I can't be myself, then what's the point? Which is an amazing thing. And they're now looking for something different. They're looking for a more mature relationship where they can be themselves. Do you see that a lot as well?
Yeah, I've got quite a few clients at the moment at that phase. And with it comes either when they're in that 40, 50, sometimes they're able to make that choice. There's three choices. I mean, either they're able to work with their partner, but the partner needs to be open to it.
Yes.
And also recognise that they're going through a change, and that the relationship, the marriage, can't be the same as it was for the first 25 years. Because we're growing and we're changing all the time. And each of us has to grow. And what happens, sadly, is that one might grow and the other one doesn't. Or one stays stuck. And that can be either way for men or for women. Sometimes the man grows. But the woman is also then afraid to leave the marriage, because if she's been there 40 years almost, I have a client at the moment, almost 40 years married, and what if I leave? What am I going to do? They're not happy together because the husband's still not treating her with love and respect, but she's found that love and respect for herself.
Mhm.
And yet there's that fear. And so that's also, how you help a woman to be herself if she chooses to stay in a relationship that's not loving. That's a tricky one as well, a difficult one.
Yeah, absolutely.
Do
And it is
do
a
you think
beautiful
that
thing that she's loving herself now.
do you think
What was
that
that?
women are aware of, there's cyclical changes that go on, even with childbirth? Like I remember distinctly when my child was born thinking, oh, well, I'll still be on the podium somewhere. And it didn't work out that way, right? So my relationship changed immediately because of my partner's focus on my child, and the extent to which I became way in the background. And then as we go through these things, how can women make it easier for men to understand these changes and how they can not only support but also, like, I guess, play the role that women need as they go through this?
Maybe it's a lot about more open education, when they're younger, because it's not about, it's not the responsibility of the woman to get the man to understand. It's both of them need that ongoing education and learning. And maybe it's early in the relationships that there's a lot more talk about how do you grow together? How do you grow through changes together so that they do it together? The focus often is that achievement when we're young. You want a career, you want a job, you need to do things, or children. And we have to move from that striving for ambition into a life of meaning. And menopause is the time where we begin to move into a life of meaning, men and women. Women, it's quite obvious because of the physical menopause that takes place. But even then, there's a fear that I'll lose my achievements and career. You won't. It's about how do you transform the way you approach, your purpose in life is more about giving meaning to yourself and to others and finding meaning. And if they can do that together, that's wonderful.
Yeah, that's an excellent point. I mean, I think with childbirth, I think many men find when they're young fathers that they get lost. They don't know where they are in their relationship anymore. And I imagine the same is true, when you go through a relationship with someone in menopause, but the discussions aren't being had back when we're having children. So it's a great point you make, because for a lot of guys, when they first have their first child, they kind of lose themselves in the relationship. They no longer understand what role it is they're supposed to play. And I think that just continues on, to your point, right? If you don't talk about things like this in the early phases of a relationship, you're probably not likely to talk about them later.
And I think we come back to that. Sorry, Leanne, you go.
It really is a space of discovery, I think, for everybody. The person going through menopause, the partner, the kids, the friends, the other family members, to really go, okay, what is going on here? And from my experience, when there's a lot going on around us and then you add in menopause as well, it actually highlights what's not right for us, what's not working. And the more we do that inner work, the less problematic the menopausal symptoms are. When I have that time of the month and my emotions dive and I just want to hide away from everyone, I can now go, okay, I'm having a moment, just breathe. You'll be all right in a day or two. Whereas before I would just kind of lose it. So, it's that understanding of what's happening to your body that really makes a big difference.
And it's about embracing and accepting what is in the body, because if we begin to become an observer, notice what's happening, and then embrace it and breathe into it, we can move it forward a little bit. I guess I'm 81 now, Scott, so with that, if I'd have known a lot of this when I was 40 and 50, it took a while to learn it. But I think if you can help people or help men and women to understand life is full of transitions. And we're constantly growing. And if only we can sort of, like, particularly for women, for men it's embracing the sage, but for women it's embracing the crone that they're going to become.
Mm-hmm.
And some women say to me, I don't want to be a crone. But a crone is a woman who crowns her wisdom. That's where the word came from. The crone is the woman who crowns her wisdom. And she even has to become a hag. And the negative terms of hag and crone, hag actually comes from the goddess of wisdom, Hagia. And Hagia was the goddess of wisdom. So women
interesting how
embrace
it
that.
Negative.
Yeah, it was turned negative, by the dominating masculine tradition of the time.
Right.
And the witches were burnt because they were making herbs and finding natural healing powers.
Yeah.
But we need to bring back that wisdom. And
So how do you go on? No, you go.
The more women who do it, the more we're able to sort of bring transformation, not just for ourselves, but for those around us.
Yeah. So what I'm really curious about is, like, what are the tips? Like, when do you first really understand that you're starting? And then what would you say are the 5 things that you should probably think about or address as you're going through the first stages of this? So I'm recognizing there's a change going on. What is the first thing that you think women should address, second, third, and fourth? What are the real...
I think, first of all, not to be afraid of it, to know that it's a natural thing. So don't have the fear. And then to find someone that you can talk to, other women that you can talk to, women who also are not afraid of it. So it's building up friendships. There's a lot of women out there now doing a lot of work, helping women to understand that process.
Right.
And if you can find a guide or a mentor, that for me was one of the most important things, finding a mentor that taught me how to go within, even though I had a strong spiritual background. Learning how to go within and do that inner work was hard, but finding someone who sits with you, like the alchemist. Often the alchemist was male, but he always had a female counterpart who sat with him.
Right.
And if we have that partnership with someone who understands and who can guide us through that transition, I think that's important. And then being positive and healthy and doing all the things that you can do health-wise, looking after yourself. And if you need to pull back a little bit from work, find a different work where you've got purpose in life, where you've got meaning in life. You might have more ideas there, Leanne.
No, I think that's all amazing. And unfortunately, we're running out of time. So I just want to tell our listeners that we will have the links to connect with Ann. You can check out her website and find out more about what she does and how she helps women through the alchemy of their midlife, and a little bit more about menopause as well. She has a wonderful podcast as well, which is called Alchemy in the Midlife Kitchen.
Yes, and it's on Spotify.
Love that name.
Apple, Spotify, and Google podcasts.
Yes, so highly recommend having a listen to that as well. And if you are struggling in this area, please reach out to Ann. She's such a wealth of knowledge, and she's such a beautiful, gentle soul. And I do want to encourage people to reach out to her if they need to. It really can make a massive difference in where you're at, in your relationships, not just with others, but especially your relationship with yourself.
Thanks, Leanne.
Yeah, and thanks, Ann. This has been really interesting, and I think a topic that many men need to spend a lot more time talking about, because not only do we not understand it, we also fear it. So I think that combination of things is pretty bad. I'm really looking forward to having you on again and maybe exploring that perspective.
That'd be lovely.
So really appreciate your time today. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you so much for having me. Thank you, Leanne. Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, everyone. We'll see you next time. Thanks for listening.